Ethan Malik came home to the sound of silence, the kind that hums when two people have said too much. He and Maya had argued that morning about bills, the kind of dull argument that hides something sharper beneath. He went looking for his keys in her handbag, half irritated, half tired, when his fingers brushed a second phone, matte black. No case. It buzzed once. And curiosity, simple, stupid curiosity, made him unlock it. There were no pictures, no contacts, just a string of texts from an unknown number. Same place, same time. Bring everything. His throat tightened. He tried to laugh it off, maybe a work thing, maybe a friend's. But then another message appeared. Delete after reading M, the initial, was hers. His heart stuttered. His mind spun with impossible logic. And for the first time in 12 years of marriage, Ethan wondered who Maya really was when she wasn't looking at him. Later that night, Ethan told himself it was just curiosity, that he'd put the phone back in Maya's bag tomorrow and pretend he never saw it. But sleep never came. Each time his eyes closed, those words replayed. Bring everything. He wondered what everything meant. Money? Secrets? Him? He scrolled through the messages again, noticing timestamps that aligned too perfectly with Maya's. Work dinners. A pit formed in his stomach. His hands shook as he read one last text. We'll finish the story soon. The word story gnawed at him. He taught literature. Stories were lies told beautifully. What kind of story was his wife finishing without him? Morning came with its cruel pretense of normalcy. Maya hummed while making coffee, moving easily around the kitchen like the night before had never happened. Ethan watched her, every motion now suspiciously graceful. He studied the way she looked at him, if her smile was the same as yesterday's or practiced anew. He thought about asking her, but fear disguised itself as patience, so he simply said, You sleep okay? She nodded, hair tied up, lips curved in effortless warmth. And in that tiny, ordinary moment, Ethan realized how easily love could hide lies, how silence could protect the guilty and the afraid alike. Driving to work, Ethan's mind replayed their argument, the texts, and that single letter, M. The windshield wipers beat a nervous rhythm as rain blurred the suburban streets. He tried to rationalize. Maybe it was an old phone, a work thing, anything but what his gut whispered. When he reached a red light, he looked at the device again, tucked in his jacket pocket, and wondered if knowing the truth would make him freer or destroy him completely. The light turned green, but he didn't move. Sometimes the worst prisons have no bars, just secrets we choose not to unlock. That evening, Maya called, saying she'd be late. Client dinner, she said easily, her voice crisp but distracted. Ethan stood by the window, looking at his reflection in the glass. Tired eyes, forced composure. He looked down at the phone in his hand, heart racing, thumb hovering over the screen. He wasn't a jealous man. He was a curious one. But curiosity has its own violence. When he finally opened the latest message, his blood ran cold. It wasn't addressed to her. It was to him. You weren't supposed to find this. The screen went dark. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, Ethan's world quietly split in two. By morning, denial had lost its grip. Ethan sat alone in the school parking lot before classes, staring at the burner phone as if it might confess on its own. The messages now felt alive, pulsing each time the screen lit up. He scrolled backward. Code names, numbers, times, short lines that read like stage directions. One message stopped him cold. Confirmed transfer before he suspects. His stomach twisted. He could only be him. He looked out at the students crossing the courtyard, their laughter echoing in the drizzle. It hit him how easily normal life continued while his own cracked quietly beneath the surface. The phone buzzed again. Delete everything. Tonight, he didn't delete a thing. That night, The house felt heavier. Maya worked late again, her voice over the phone calm, distant, rehearsed. Ethan replayed every syllable, searching for tremors in her tone. On impulse, he called the number from the burner. The line rang twice before a man's voice answered. A calm, low register, unfamiliar yet intimate. Wrong number, the voice said, then paused. Or maybe not. The line clicked dead. Ethan stared at the screen, heartbeat crashing in his ears. Whoever that man was, he knew exactly who Ethan was. And that meant the game had already begun. Ethan couldn't focus at work. Every sound, the ping of a student's phone, the whisper of paper, felt accusatory. During lunch, he sat in the staff lounge pretending to grade essays while he typed the texts into a document, trying to decipher patterns. The words formed something like choreography: meet, confirm, deliver, erase. He noticed that the texts alternated between two writing styles, one clinical, one emotional. The colder voice signed every few lines with a single period. The emotional one used ellipses. His breath caught when he realized Maya always used ellipses when she was lying. That evening, Maya came home earlier than expected. Ethan hid the phone beneath a cushion just as she entered. She kissed his cheek, routine, familiar, and it burned like guilt. "You look tired," she said, her tone laced with casual concern. "Long day," he smiled thinly, nodding. As she turned away, her purse slipped from her shoulder, spilling receipts and lipstick across the couch. He saw a faint circular imprint in the bag's lining where the burner used to be. She hadn't noticed it missing, or she wanted him to think she hadn't. Both possibilities terrified him. Unable to endure the ambiguity, Ethan drove to the cafe mentioned in one of the texts. It was small, tucked near the edge of town, empty, except for a man sitting alone by the window. He recognized him vaguely. Daniel Reyes. An old friend, Maya's financial consultant. Daniel looked up, smiled too warmly, and raised his coffee as if expecting him. Ethan's chest tightened. "Ethan's chest tightened? Did Maya send you?" Daniel asked. The question struck like a slap. Ethan's mouth went dry. He didn't answer. Outside, the rain stopped, but inside, the air was heavy with everything unspoken. Trust dissolving in the quiet hiss of an espresso machine. Ethan had never followed anyone before. That night, he waited outside Maya's office, parked beneath a flickering street lamp. Her car was still there. The building's windows reflected only darkness. At 9:42 p.m., the elevator lights flicked on. She stepped out moments later, phone pressed to her ear, her laugh bright and unfamiliar. She crossed the street to a black sedan that wasn't hers. The door opened from inside. Daniel Reyes. Ethan felt his pulse thud behind his eyes. He grabbed his phone to take a picture, but his hands shook too much. The sedan's headlights cut across his face, freezing him in their glare. Then it drove away, leaving him alone with the sound of his own shallow breath. The next morning, Ethan couldn't pretend anymore. He called in sick, but instead of resting, he drove to the edge of town where a small pie firm operated above a hardware store. Priya Patel introduced herself with a dry handshake and an expression that didn't waste sympathy. "You're not the first husband to walk in here," she said. He handed her the burner phone. "Just tell me what this really is." She studied it, then looked up. "This isn't just cheating. Someone's running an operation." Her words felt like gravity shifting. "You want the truth?" she asked. He nodded. "Then stop looking for comfort." 2 days later, Priya called him with results. "Your wife's texts connect to a shell company. Money transfers offshore accounts." The name tied to it, Daniel Reyes. Ethan's chest went cold. "So it's financial?" he asked. "Financial, emotional, maybe criminal. Take your pick." That night, he poured whiskey into a coffee mug and stared at their wedding photo. the one where Maya had looked genuinely happy. He wondered if she'd been lying even then, or if the truth had simply changed shape over time. He realized that love and deceit can coexist perfectly, as long as both people need something from the other. Ethan met Daniel again unannounced at his downtown office. The air between them buzzed with unspoken tension. "You following me now?" Daniel asked, voice smooth, amused. Ethan didn't answer. He placed the burner phone on the desk. "You know what this is." Daniel's smile faltered just enough. "You should be careful where you point your suspicion." He leaned forward. "Maya's not the one you should worry about." The words landed like a loaded gun, both men aware of the threat inside them. Ethan walked out trembling, not sure if he'd just been warned or invited deeper. That night, Ethan waited for Maya to come home, but she didn't. Hours passed. Then his phone buzzed. Not the burner, his own. A message from an unknown number. "You're in too deep. Stop digging." He looked out the window. Across the street, a dark car idled under a street lamp. Its engine hummed like a warning. He stepped closer, but the car pulled away, vanishing into the mist. The glow of its taillights bled red across the wet asphalt. A signature written in silence. He realized finally that he wasn't uncovering a betrayal. He was walking straight into someone else's script. Priya's voice was calm when she called, but the words shook him. "Ethan, there's more. Your wife's company just wired $40,000 to an account in Daniel's name." The world tilted. Ethan printed the records, pages trembling in his hands. When Maya came home that night, he laid them on the table between their plates. She stared at them. Then, at him, her expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have gone digging," she whispered. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Her tone wasn't guilt, it was fear. For a moment he almost believed she was the victim until she added, barely audible, "This was supposed to end before you found out." Maya didn't sleep that night. Ethan heard her pacing the hallway, whispering into her phone. At dawn she sat on the edge of the bed. "They're watching us," she said softly. "It's not what you think." He wanted to believe her, but every sentence sounded curated. She told him Daniel had forced her into laundering funds for a client's charity scam, that she was trying to gather evidence to turn him in. "That's why the burner," she pleaded. "I was protecting us." Ethan searched her eyes for truth but found only exhaustion. When she reached for his hand, he let her, because even liars can look terrified. Priya met Ethan again in a deserted parking garage. She handed him a flash drive. Inside are copies of every transaction. Daniel's name shows up everywhere, but so does hers. Ethan plugged it into his laptop in the car. Lines of data scrolled across the screen. Payments, offshore accounts, coded memos, labeled script. His breath froze when he read one entry. "Malik, transfer, final act pending." It wasn't business language. It was narrative. Someone was writing their lives like a play, each move already rehearsed. He realized the story wasn't about infidelity anymore. It was about control. Ethan confronted Daniel in the alley behind his office. Rain hammered the pavement. "You're using my wife," Ethan shouted. Daniel smirked, lighting a cigarette. "Everyone uses someone, Ethan," she wrote the script. "I just followed directions." He tossed the cigarette into a puddle and walked away. Ethan grabbed his arm, rage flaring. But Daniel only smiled wider. "Careful," he said. "You're in Act 4 now. You know how Act 4 ends." Then he slipped into the darkness, leaving Ethan trembling, soaked, clutching nothing but his disbelief. When Ethan returned home, the house was empty. On the kitchen table sat the burner phone and a note in Maya's handwriting. "Don't call the police. They'll come for both of us." The phone buzzed once. New message. "The ending's ready. Follow instructions." His pulse pounded as he read coordinates linked to an abandoned lake house north of the city. The same place they'd honeymooned years ago. He realized the script wasn't finished because he was meant to write the last scene. And somewhere Maya was waiting for her cue. The drive to the lake felt endless. a tunnel of wet asphalt and headlights dissolving into mist. Ethan's phone lay silent on the passenger seat, but the burner buzzed every few miles. New coordinates, new commands. It was guiding him like a puppet toward a place he already knew too well. The closer he got, the more memory bled into fear. Laughter on the dock years ago. The smell of rain and cedar. Maya's promise that the lake would always be their reset. Now it was the end of the story. As he turned onto the dirt road, his headlights caught a figure standing by the old gate. Priya. "You shouldn't have come alone," she said. He realized then that the script wasn't just Maya's. It belonged to everyone who had touched it. Inside the lake house, time felt suspended. Dust floated like ash in the beam of Ethan's flashlight. The air smelled of damp wood and something faintly metallic. "She's been here," Priya whispered, pointing at a half-empty coffee cup on the counter. Then she opened her tablet, pulling up encrypted messages, traced to the same signal as the burner. "She's not just part of it," she said. "She's the author." Ethan stared at the words. Maya's language, her syntax, her pauses. The messages weren't confessions. They were plans. Suddenly, floorboards creaked above them. Priya's hand shot up, signaling silence. Both looked toward the staircase, hearts sensing in fear. Someone else was still inside. The figure descending the stairs wasn't Maya. It was Daniel. His calm smile was gone, replaced by something colder. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice low. The ending was already written. Ethan's pulse thundered. Priya stepped forward, recording discreetly. "Where's Maya?" she demanded. Daniel smirked. "She's doing what she does best, trying to save you." He dropped a folder onto the floor, papers scattering across the boards. Photographs, transfers, emails, all signed with Ethan's name. "They'll think it was you," Daniel said. She made sure of it. For a moment, Ethan's world narrowed to the sound of rain on the roof, and the truth tearing itself open. Thunder rolled across the lake as Ethan and Priya searched the upper rooms. The house was a museum of their past. Dusty photos, forgotten clothes, echoes of laughter trapped in the walls. On the nightstand lay a notebook embossed with Maya's initials. Inside were pages of messages written longhand, identical to the burner texts, each labeled draft. At the bottom of the last page, one line stood out. "When he finally understands, I'll be free." Priya glanced at Ethan. She was planning an exit, not a con, she murmured. Outside, sirens wailed faintly, growing nearer. Ethan's throat tightened as realization bled through disbelief. Maya hadn't been writing a crime. She'd been writing a confession. By the time the police arrived, Maya was gone. Her car tracks vanished into the mud leading toward the highway. An officer questioned Ethan while Priya watched silently, the notebook sealed in an evidence bag. "You think she ran?" the detective asked. Ethan looked toward the lake, where dawn was breaking in pale silver streaks. "No," he said quietly. She finished the story. The wind carried the smell of rain and smoke. Something burning far off. Ethan dropped the burner phone into the water. It sank with a faint hiss, vanishing beneath ripples that mirrored the sky. For the first time, he felt the weight of truth without the promise of closure. The morning after the lake, the story was everywhere. Local news led with nonprofit under investigation for fraud. Maya's photo flashed on every screen. Smiling beside Ethan in happier days, he watched from the couch, expression hollow, the voiceover describing a missing executive and a cooperating witness. His phone rang non-stop. Reporters, colleagues, even students asking if it was true. Priya stood by the window saying nothing. "They'll think she's dead," Ethan murmured. "Or guilty," Priya replied. The truth was that Maya had built a trap so elaborate that even innocence looked criminal. And Ethan, the man who'd loved her most, had handed them the script. At police headquarters, fluorescent light stripped away every pretense. Ethan sat opposite Detective Ramos, who flipped through a folder thick with printouts. "You knew about the transfers?" the detective asked. "Not until it was too late." Ethan's voice cracked. Ramos nodded slowly. "Your wife planned a whistleblower drop." "But the account signatures," he slid a page forward, "carry your name." Ethan felt the air leave him. "She was protecting me," he said weakly. Ramos studied him for a long moment. "Or framing you to save herself." The line between victim and accomplice blurred until Ethan couldn't see where he stood. When Ethan walked out of the precinct, flashes burst like lightning. Microphones thrust toward him. Voices shouting questions he couldn't answer. "Did your wife steal the money? Are you hiding her?" Each word hit like gravel. Priya pulled him toward her car, shielding him from the noise. Inside, he sat trembling, the chaos muffled by closed doors. "You can still fix this," she said. "Tell them everything." He stared ahead, watching his reflection in the windshield blur beneath flashing sirens. "I already did," he whispered. "They just haven't realized it's their story now." Outside, the media lights burned like judgment. By the time night fell, the city had turned her disappearance into spectacle. News anchors speculated, podcasts dissected, strangers argued online about guilt and betrayal. Ethan sat in his darkened classroom, the projector flickering with last week's lesson notes. Narrative. Who controls the story? The irony gnawed at him. Priya entered quietly, setting down a manila envelope. Inside were photos of tire tracks near the lake, a woman's scarf caught in reeds, and a partial fingerprint on the burner phone. "It's hers," Priya said softly. Ethan closed his eyes. The evidence didn't prove death, but it ended denial. The woman he loved had written herself out of the story, literally. Later that night, Ethan walked alone through the rain toward the city bridge. The water below shimmered with passing lights, each reflection breaking apart like fragments of their life together. He took out the last thing Maya had written. A message auto-saved on the burner phone draft folder. "You can't save someone who's already written the ending." He read it twice, then once more, letting the words settle like sediment. Somewhere beneath the noise, he understood she hadn't just destroyed herself. She'd dismantled the illusion they'd both lived in. The city roared around him, but all he could hear was her voice in the rain, fading into silence. Weeks passed, and the noise faded. The news cycle found new tragedies, new faces. Maya became a rumor, a cautionary headline buried beneath fresher scandals. Ethan returned to teaching, but nothing felt the same. His students watched him carefully now, curiosity tinged with pity. He caught his reflection in the window one afternoon and barely recognized the man staring back. The warmth was gone, replaced by a kind of quiet vacancy. He realized that betrayal doesn't end with forgiveness or punishment. It ends when there's nothing left worth explaining. Every story ends, but not every truth finds an audience. After class, Ethan drove back to the lake one last time. The road was dry now, the trees stripped bare by autumn wind. He parked near the water and walked to the spot where he'd dropped the phone. The lake was calm, its surface like glass, reflecting a sky too clear for grief. He knelt, touched the wet sand, and whispered, "You got what you wanted, Maya. An ending no one can rewrite." In his pocket, he carried her wedding ring, found later in the evidence box. He tossed it gently into the lake. It sank without a sound, leaving no ripple at all. Driving home, Ethan recorded a voice memo. One final confession meant for no one. "You were right," he said softly. "The story was never about who lied or who loved more. It was about how silence writes its own endings." He paused, listening to the hum of tires on wet pavement. "If anyone ever reads this, remember, the truth doesn't set you free. It just stops you from pretending." He ended the recording and deleted it. Outside, the city lights blurred through rain on the windshield, every reflection a ghost of what used to be real. Weeks later, Ethan packed the last of Maya's belongings into a single box. Every item felt like a sentence from a story he no longer had the right to tell. Her watch, a scarf, a photo from their honeymoon. He carried the box to the backyard and lit a small fire in the rusted metal bin they used for winter gatherings. One by one, the relics curled into flame, the paper edges glowing orange before turning to ash. He didn't cry. He just watched the smoke drift upward, vanishing into the cold dusk air, and thought about how endings never really end. They just stop insisting on being remembered. Later that night, Ethan stood in the doorway of the now empty house. The rooms echoed softly, filled only with the sound of rain returning. On the table sat his phone, the burner one beside it, both lifeless now. He picked up the burner, thumb hovering for a moment before powering it on. The screen blinked once, displaying a single saved draft. "If anyone finds this, tell him I tried." He stared at it, then deleted it. The screen went black. He placed both phones in a drawer and turned off the light. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing away the last trace of their story.